because the government believes that whether you were born in this country or whether you ultimately immigrate to this country, that everyone has something to offer, the government stands resolute to the resolution. The U.S. federal government will take action to reform immigration policy. Thank you to my opponents for being here and to the judge. Observation 1, resolution analysis. Subpoint A, we define this as a policy, call to action. Subpoint B, the terms. U.S. federal government, we will define as Congress. Will take action is going to be to pass a law. Reform is to change into a preferred form. Immigration policy is a term used in political discussions regarding how a state or country deal with the transit of persons that either cross or have already entered into its borders. Are we okay with definitions? Good. Subpoint C, the plan. Congress will pass a law that will be implemented on January 1st, 2015, allowing for an amnesty program to all current illegal immigrants that will run for 1 year's time. So time frame being January 1st, 2015 through December 31st, 2015. This will happen through normal means, and obviously Congress will pass and be signed into the law by President Obama, excuse me. My subpoint D here is net benefits. Yes, sir.
Yeah, could you just talk about the amnesty program a little bit? You said something about like it's going to last a year, sort of like what happens in that year and things like that.
Absolutely. I'll get into it right now, into my observation. Observation 2, you could call this modeling. Amnesty programs are designed to give a pathway to those that have come into the country illegally, to those that have come into the country without going through the old-fashioned steps, perhaps that was going through Ellis Island 60, 70 years ago. Nowadays, it's perhaps coming in through with a work visa or a permit, claiming asylum, claiming some other step. We currently have over 12 million illegal immigrants in the country. This amnesty program is designed to allow these people to come into the daylight, to acknowledge who they are, and to begin a pathway through citizenship. My subpoint A is that, as I just talked about, we currently have all these illegal immigrants right now. My subpoint, my inherency here is that a lot of these illegal immigrants, because they can be deported currently if they're found, they're scared to come forward. By coming through and taking advantage of an amnesty program, they now would not face deportation in and of itself strictly for being an illegal immigrant. Now, of course, if there are warrants, if they've committed crimes, if there's outstanding things such as background checks that as you go down the amnesty program that anyone would have to go through, that could affect their citizenship down the road, but it allows them to come into the light. My C point here is the plan, which is to allow amnesty to these guys, allows for them to come out into the open. My subpoint D here is that this plan has worked in the past. Now, both President Clinton and prior to him, President Reagan had amnesty programs that did work. Yes, sir.
Can I just clarify what the illegal immigrant would have to do in order to receive, like where would they have to go and what list would they have to sign up for to get this amnesty?
They would follow plans that have been set forth already through the like the immigration acts that exist for people that are currently that want to come through the legal process already, that have not already been determined, quote, as illegal immigrants, or who haven't been determined that, for instance, their visa have run out and stuff like that. They would simply file the application. There's a pathway to citizenship already. They would just now follow this pathway to citizenship as an illegal immigrant. Now, again, President Reagan in 1986 ran a pathway to citizenship with an amnesty program that allowed for 2.7 million people to become citizens. President Clinton followed that in 1995. That initially allowed 578,000 people. They then extended the amnesty program and allowed for another 200,000 people to reach citizenship. Now, my observation number 3, you can tagline this economics. Again, the harms right now is that we have over 12 million illegal immigrants in this country, and a lot of them are not paying either taxes, they are not always receiving benefits, they're not in the system, for lack of a better word. The inherency here is that because they don't pay taxes, that because they don't do this, A, they don't always get the benefits that they deserve or would be entitled to if they were a normal citizenship here. The solvency here is that the plan, by giving them a pathway to citizenship, will put them on the right path towards this. It will make their futures better. My impacts here is this. A UCLA study conducted in 2013 showed that by bringing these immigrants to the forefront, that they could bring in an excess of they currently bring in $150 billion of economic stimulated activity to the economy. So by bringing them in and bringing them in legally, we would actually be able to monitor that. This is the greatest point. We would have more money paid into programs such as Social Security, such as income tax. This would also allow, even though some illegal immigrants do pay into Social Security, because some of them do file under, like, for instance, false numbers and stuff like that, this would allow them to receive benefits back that they've actually lawfully and rightfully paid themselves into. So what you kind of see here is, by allowing an amnesty program, we're opening up the country, we're opening up a pathway to these people to become citizens, to become more fruitful in their work with the country. So once again, we believe that, giving these immigrants a pathway to citizenship and letting them come into the light, letting them put themselves into the system, is better not only for these individuals, but also for the U.S. as a country. We think that our plan will begin to eliminate some negative stigma, negative stereotypes that go along with being a quote-unquote illegal immigrant. Again, this gives us a pathway to there. Once again, thank you for your time.
All right, quick roadmap. I'm going to go same order that they went in, so case and then off case. And just for off case, there's going to be 4 off case positions. The opposition team also shares the same thesis with the government team in the round, which is that whether you are born in this country or you've come here from elsewhere, you have something to offer this country. However, we disagree on what is the best way to get those people involved and what is the best way to have the most productive contribution. So let's get to their observation 2 of modeling. They say that, like, amnesty is for people to become legal without old-fashioned steps. My response here is that, 1, those old-fashioned steps they talk about are not old-fashioned. What those are current immigration policy that say if you want to become a citizen, there are certain things you have to do. You have to submit to a background check. You have to pay a fee. You have to register. You have to take a test on American history. So there are things that you have to do to become a citizen. And they try to say, oh, those are just old-fashioned steps, don't worry about them. But they're really important, especially like a background check. So then their link is that they're scared to come forward. And so my response here basically is going to be that, like, they're still going to be too scared to come forward after plan. The government right now is the one deporting them. So when that same institution says that, oh, now you can just show us where you are and we're not going to deport you, they're not going to trust them. Couple that with all-time low approval ratings of Congress and the president, especially among Latino voters, which make up over half of the illegal immigrants in our country. So they're still not going to come forward. Then they're one second, I'll get to you at the end. They said that it worked in the past. Clinton and Reagan did it. But amnesty is supposed to be something that happens once. So the way that you see if it works is that you do it once and you don't need to do it again. So when they say it worked in past, I'm going to say turn. Amnesty failed in the past, which is why we're talking about it again, because it didn't work in the past. And the number of illegal immigrants coming here just kept increasing. And so all that it did was incentivize them to illegally immigrate here in the hopes that they would then become legal. So yeah. What was your point of information?
Two quick questions. One, do you think no immigrants would come forward because of this plan because they're scared? And my second question would be, do you not feel like any illegal immigration has happened since the last amnesty programs?
I'll take the first question, and I'm going to say that maybe a couple will, but our counter plan is going to solve more, and I'll get to that. And they said it worked in past in '86. So that means in just 20 years, basically 25-ish, we have to do another amnesty program. And if you have an amnesty program every 25 years, it doesn't work for the infrastructure of a state. Now let's move on to their observation 3 econ. So first, their uniqueness, about 12 million illegals, and a lot of them are not in the system and that they don't pay taxes. And our response, which they kind of started to clarify at the end of their position, was that many of them do pay in to these systems, and so therefore it's not that they're not in the system or don't pay into them. But let's just get to the impact level. They say that this will essentially increase our economics, that it'll be good for the country. I'm gonna turn this and say that it's gonna decrease economics, because here's what's gonna happen: is that as these illegals now become citizens, they're now gonna be eligible for federal benefits. And literally, you say there's 12 million. So if we give you the 12 million solvency, however much solvency you get, we're not. But say you get 2 million solvency, then that means instantly 2 million new citizens in the course of 1 year that are now this huge strain on federal infrastructure. So we're going to see econ decrease as the federal government really starts going deeper and deeper into debt. And so because of that, they're going to increase taxes, which ultimately leads to a less productive economy. Yeah.
Is it the opposition that everyone however many people you want to grant solvency for, is it the opposition that every one of them is going to be a drain on society?
No, but just simply that when you receive federal benefits, that comes from tax revenue. We don't believe these people are drains on society, but we believe that they require resources. Next we're going to run a topicality, though, and sorry I didn't get to that first. I really wanted to get to their case. So for now, a topicality on the word reform. Our counter definition is that this should be what were you saying about the counter definition? Yeah, that reform means that it's permanent. And for example, when you talk about immigration reform, that's why they're talking about things like, maybe extending the DREAM Act, doing things like that. Blanket amnesty is not really immigration reform. But so the point is that they're not reforming anything. They're not changing any law. In fact, after a year, there will be no change in immigration policy. So the fact that it's not permanent is the violation. The standards are education. When we're talking about reform, it means we identify that there's a problem and we want to find a fix that works into the future so the next generations don't have to deal with it. And when we have already shown that amnesty doesn't do that, you have to keep doing amnesty programs. So it's not going to be anything permanent. So for education, it's bad. It also takes our ground, because we should have ground to run minor repair, we can do little intermittent programs, whereas they have the more large-scale reform ground, so our ground is taken. So you're going to be voting on a priori. They're not topical, so you don't even have to consider case, but you're also going to be voting on ground, that our ground should be minor repair, and they take it. So now let's move to DA1. Tagline this: bullocks to the rules. So in the book Lord of the Flies, a bunch of kids have to decide how they want to rule themselves, and very early on they decide that once they realize they don't have to pay attention to the rules, that they don't have to maintain those societal conventions, and things get violent. But so now let's move to the A point. We have a system right now which means that you have to pay a fee, submit a background check, you have to register, you have to take a test in order to become a citizen. Also, the immigrants who have done this and have become citizens legally feel a sense of proudness and achievement from it, and community. B point is that their plan allows for immigrants to avoid this entire process. The C point is that this sends the message to immigrants that rules aren't important, and also it will upset those who lawfully immigrated and became citizens. So the impact is you have an increase in the lack of care for the law, which can manifest itself in a lot of bad things, but notably violence. The second impact is backlash from legal immigrants in the form of protests, which are also likely going to be violent, as we saw in recent Ferguson protests. When there's injustice, people will get violent. Our next disadvantage too of masking let's just get to counterplan. No DA2. Counterplan. The Congress will extend the DREAM Act to the parents of dreamers. Congress will extend the DREAM Act to the parents of dreamers. So this means that we get the net benefits of extending the DREAM Act to a lot of those parents, which is millions of people, and it's competitive because it's a different agent, and they're topically competitive as well. So that's why you're going to be voting for opposition today.
You got to talk about why you prefer our definition. Like they say, the one must be permanent, the form has to be changed. We're the government, we have the right to define fairly. Then you say, based on the main disadvantages, if they run disadvantages, there must be fair. We're having this disadvantage, they run a disadvantage, right? So it must be fair if they're running disadvantages, right? Well, then you say things like, we're having this debate, so how can it be unfair if we're still debating? And say, it's just unfortunate that they let him die and stuff like that. And the biggest answer to this is when they say it's the interests of the parents that their citizens and all that. The answer to that is a non-parents because it's extended to parents once they become citizens. And I don't know if you know that already. Yeah. Cool.
We're not recording this, are we?
Yeah, we are. Just remember, line by line stuff, and you'll be great.
I like to thank my opponents for their opinions, and I like to thank my partner for setting me up, and the judges who are watching. So I think I'm going to start on with the off case first. Alright, for the off case, our opponent brought topicality. They believe that reform should be permanent, but we believe that reform should just be changed. They said that we took away their ground, but they were obviously able to come with disadvantages, so this is a topical debate. And also for theirs, that their counter plan is non-unique in that it already exists for the parents of the DREAM Act, because once the children become citizens, the parents also become citizens. For Bullocks to the rules, for their subpoint A, they talked about the immigration policies of where you pay a fee, test, and background. What I don't think our opponents understand is with a lot of immigrants, they don't want to lose their national language because that's their culture. They were born with it, and they don't want to become an Americanized. And that's a lot of things that we do kind of like shove down people's face. We're shoving down this uniformity. Where like you can't be in the U.S. unless you're like us. You have to speak like us. You got to act like us. And a lot of people don't necessarily want to do that. And with our plan, this allows for, within a year period, for these illegal immigrants to not have to be subjugated to for the tests. We're not saying that we're going to stop background checks, because those are important. We're not going to be promoting criminals in, but we are allowing people who already live in the U.S. to step forward, like my partner said, out of the light, because we make it make it seem really bad for people to be illegal immigrants. A lot of the reasons we have people who immigrate are for the following. They want to be reunited with their families. A lot of them are come to the U.S. for job opportunities. We invite immigrants to come in because they have certain skills that we would like, and it helps boost the U.S. economy. We also do it to protect refugees and promote diversity because the U.S. is a melting pot. We have all these diverse people, and we promote this. Um, the current U.S. immigration policy only allows 675,000 permanent immigrants annually, and this doesn't count towards refugees where there's only 70,000. For a citizen to get citizenship, they have to have it for at least 5 years. And like my partner says, a lot of what happens is they will come in legally, but then after a year they let it expire because they are getting these annual fees of about $650. And for a lot of immigrants who are just working part-time jobs, $650 could be a month's rent. And if you have a family, this can be really toll, like a chunk of money. Currently, our legal immigrants make up about 3.5% of the population, and for the ones that are currently who get a paycheck, like my partner said, they're giving fake social security numbers, and so for the amount of money taken out of their paychecks for social security benefits, they will never receive. It's about $6 billion to $7 billion that they'll never see. So, for our opponents, they said that. So we do. They say that the legal immigrants don't trust the U.S. government because the U.S. government will deport them. But so I'll go to observation 3 of econ. They said that this would create a strain because these illegal immigrants would be able to gain federal benefits. Well, we don't believe that would become a strain because naturally with our population already growing, it's going to create a natural strain. So if we add these people in, they're paying taxes, it will help with the federal benefits anyways. And yeah, so going back to if illegal immigrants already don't trust the U.S. government, if they don't trust our plan, it's only natural that they won't trust their plan either. And when they said that it worked in the past, they said that if we keep using amnesties, immigrants will just keep coming with the hopes of becoming legal. Well, we think that they should because the U.S. is a land of opportunity, and if we only allow it for the children, because the DREAM Act is for the children. So what about for the people who don't have children? That just making it seem like, oh, if you don't have kids, then you can't enter our country and you can't become a citizen that way. But what about with the population of the world growing? We shouldn't be promoting people to just have kids and neglect them that way. We should be promoting people with skills to be wanting to come to our country. Because if we're just promoting the people who to have kids, then that could become strenuous. And I'll stop there.
Okay, just for a roadmap, I'm going to start with the T, and then I'm going to go on case and then off case. So T, then address their observations, and then get to our DAs and counterplan. So the T, their argument was because we said that their definition of reform it means it's permanent, and since they're not reforming anything, because in a year's time status quo will be returned, which is our ground of minor repair. That's a ground we're supposed to have. Our counterplan should have been able to just been a minor repair to the system to release a pressure valve, and they took our ground from that. They didn't talk about that. They just said because we have disadvantages. Yes, we have disadvantages to their plan, but we still have had our ground robbed from us because our counterplan could have been a minor repair, and now it has to be a full-formed program, which is just not fair to the debate. And then let's get back to education. Our standard of education is better. This dropped, but it's more educational to come up in debate and to have a real diverse plan, a plan that could work forever, not just a status quo thing that we do every 20 to 25 years and just to repeat. So there's no real plan here. It's just a thing. Yes, Tom?
So in order for a plan to be educational, it has to work forever?
No, it should be something new because debate is a place where we can voice new ideas that won't necessarily pass in the real government. We think it's more educational to have better ideas and more diverse ideas than just one that every 25 years presidents already do. So, yeah, no more questions at this time. I'll try and get to you maybe later.
Awesome.
Then on their observation 2 of modeling, we said that it's not outdated, that it will still, that they won't come to this program because they don't trust, because they won't trust the government, and they'll be because of decreased approval rating. But their only answer to that was they won't trust, illegal immigrants won't trust our plan either. But they will, because the illegal immigrants were affecting our parents of DREAM Act recipients. They see firsthand that the DREAM Act worked for their children, so they will know to come forward and be able to trust the government because it worked for their children in the past, and they have trust that it will work for them, as opposed for amnesty for everyone. These are people who have no faith in the government or very little faith in the government and are always suspicious and on the run for things like this, not parents of DREAM Acts who can see the benefits firsthand of trusting our government. So that's why our plan has solvency and theirs still doesn't. Then they say people will come because people who don't have children need to, but they didn't address our turn of how it would affect, or they didn't address how it would hurt people who had gone through the system legally, which I'll get into later in our bullets to the rules. Then on their observation 3 of econ, they said it's not a strain, that these people deserve their Social Security money because they've been paying $6 billion into it that they'll never see back. We agree, but their plan is going to flood the system, meaning nobody will ever see these Social Security benefits. Not only will they not see it, just like they wouldn't see it before, but the people who have it now will not see it because the system that's already strained, that's already filled to capacity because of the baby boomers getting older, cannot take another generation of people on top of that. So instead of just the status quo of the illegal immigrants not getting Social Security, nobody will get Social Security based on their plan. So you can give us all the impacts to that and keep the turn of decreasing the economy because people's lives will be affected. They won't have retirement or anything. Now let's get to our DA1 of bullets to the rules. I'm not sure what was really addressed here, but we had an impact of violence that was never touched upon. We talked about how the people who did go through the system legally, who paid lawyers to fight for them, to go through the hoop, to jump through hoops, are going to react negatively. They're going to protest. They would they'll be upset by this plan that just gives away something that they had to fight tooth and nail for. That other people, if they had just waited a year or 2 years, got for free and with no lawyer necessary or anything. So you can flow across all our impacts of violence and people being outraged and unhappiness and violent protests breaking out. So now let's get to our counter plan. Their first criticism of our counter plan is that it's non-unique and that the parents of dreamers also become citizens. That's just not true. The children of of these people are citizens, but they themselves are not. If you have a child here, he's a citizen. If you bring your child over as a young kid and then they go to college and graduate high school and get a degree, the kid becomes a citizen, but not the parents. So the parents can still worry about being deported in the status quo the way it is. The parents do not just get a free green card like their plan would. So yes, Tom?
So do you feel people are going to be upset and protest because these parents didn't go through the same pathway that the previous generation did?
No, because they'll still have to go through the same legal hoops that everyone else did. We're extending the DREAM Act. They still have to follow the same rules as everyone else. We're not just opening it up, the floodgates to everybody. They'll not only have to go through those same loops, there are also people who have, many of them who have been in the system a long time and tried this, so they're not going to be, that violence does not come back to us because they still have to go through the same legal processes as opposed to just handing it to people for free without any sort of earning it. So just to sum up what's been here today, not only is their plan not permanent and it's just going to have to be repeated in 20 to 25 years, just like Reagan had to repeat it, just like Clinton had to repeat it, now Obama's repeating it. That means every time or every other president is going to have to pass amnesty. It's not a reform. This is almost inherent in the system at this point. So our a priori and our topic of voter on topicality is really important to this debate because they're not reforming it. And even if you don't buy that, they're still not solving because we'll have to repeat it as opposed to our plan that solves forever, and the net benefits is that we get all our solvency forever. They'll only get it for 1 year and then they'll have to either repeat this step or we'll have to have this debate over again. So that's why I urge you to vote for the opposition. Thank you. Start to clap for myself.
You're like, oh,
It's
that's
kinda
how we do
arrogant.
it.
I was like, oh, this is the time I'm supposed to clap?
All right, quick off-time roadmap. I'm going to go for just a little bit on case, and then it's going to be voters. I think it's pretty clear what this debate is about today and what the distinction is between the two sides. Here on the opposition, we want reform that is, like, we want to fix the problem in perpetuity, whereas the government just wants to put a Band-Aid on it so that the wound will then bleed again and have to be addressed again. So I want to just talk about their observation 3 of econ for a little bit. They had a response where they said, okay, but like it's going to be a natural strain as these people are legalized, but our population is already increasing, so it's not going to hurt anything. But this is going to be, so the population is already increasing, and as Spencer already said, our government is like strained too much as it is, and then you're going to add millions in a year just on top of this. And that's if your plan even works, which, again, we don't think it will, but our point is not that, like, we don't think that immigrants should get these benefits. Like, yeah, if they pay in, they should absolutely get their return. But we're just saying, as this position is just about econ, it's going to be bad for econ. So you can turn that impact. Now let's get to voters. First is the T. Now, look, like usually I don't like to vote on T, but in this case I'm gonna say vote on T because again they're doing a minor repair. Their time frame is 1 year, meaning after 1 year there will be literally no difference in immigration policy as a result. So they're not being topical. They're taking our minor repair ground, and yeah, and they never responded to our standards. And then Spencer came up here again and said like why it's really important for education, and so like we think we're winning on that, especially because our education standard. The point of standards is to show why your counter definition is preferable, and so we've had no responses to ours not being preferable. So that's why you're going to prefer our definition. So you're going to be voting on the T. Our second voter is if you give a mouse a cookie. Now let me explain this, right? If you give a mouse a cookie, he will surely want some milk. If you give him milk, he'll surely want a straw. But this is what we're seeing with amnesty programs that happen every 20, 25 years, is that when you reward them, when you give someone a reward, they're going to keep wanting more and more. And so literally we've seen this happen, where Tom brings up the warrants or the support of, in 86, it was only 2 million amnesty program. Okay, 2 million, not a big deal. But what happens is by 2014, now it's 12 million. And they're going to be getting amnesty. So we can see the number continuing to grow because they continue to get more and more. So meaning that this isn't going to fix anything. It's only going to be a Band-Aid. Our next voter is, does anyone here watch Big Lebowski or has seen it?
Nope.
Okay. Spencer has. Doesn't anybody give a damn about the rules here? It's a line from the movie. But basically, this is our bullets to the rules DA about how rules are important. And there was no response to our violence as an impact, like Spencer says, and how like it's going to be less respect for the rule of law. So next is the econ turn, and I talked about that a little bit when I went over case. That's our fourth voter. How we're already strained to capacity, and like our social security system without these extra millions of newly legalized people is shown to be insolvent by 2020. So we can imagine that that's going to happen a lot sooner if we add these people. Our next voter is like how their modeling advantage sets a bad model, and again how like amnesty will have to keep on being repeated and keep on being repeated. Our next voter is that they get no solvency because they're going to be too scared to come out and declare themselves because they're suspicious of the government. No response to our warrants of like really low approval ratings, especially among Latinos. Finally, you're going to be voting for us because of our counter plan, which offers justice to the dreamers, which are the original people who wanted a better life for their kids and brought them here. And we want to think that they deserve citizenship, and we get solvency forever. So you're voting on all.
Once again, thank you everyone for being here. Thank you to my opponents, to my partner, and of course the judge. Judge, just real quickly, I'd like to point out that time had been well extended after the 4-minute mark, so I don't even feel I need to respond to 5 or 6. That should not even be on your flow chart. It's actually abusive that he continued to talk and then continue to ask you to put voters down for voter 5 and 6. So I will only be responding to the first 4 voters because that's all you should have flowed. My response first to the topicality is honestly it was a time suck and you should just kick it. Reform is to change. Nowhere, anywhere does reform imply permanent status. We should not have to have a permanent program. We offered you reform. We clearly offered it within the framework of this debate. We were clearly able to debate. We clearly had a good educational standard here because this debate went on. They actually ran disadvantages to it, focused a lot of time on the disadvantage of what they feel is wrong with our plan. So I think you can just kick it and recognize for what it is, a time suck. And again, when they extend time otherwise, on their last speech, I think you can see they like to abuse time as it is. My second response to the voter is that this is a Band-Aid. Well, most programs, until you get to where they really are short-term fixes that hopefully lead to long-term solutions. The DREAM Act is a short-term solution. Extending it to their parents is, again, a short-term solution. It's trying to fix something that is broken right now. Talking about voter number 3 when he talks about, screw the rules. Well, again, I would say look at their counterplan. Their counterplan is saying the parents of these children who have broken rules, they don't have to follow those rules either. So why would you vote for the counterplan?
Point of order. That's an entirely new argument that somehow our disadvantaged bikes are counterweight.
I'm responding to the block at this point, so therefore I have access to it.
Okay.
There's no one to say.
Point well taken.
My fourth response to the economic turn is one, we think this has a positive impact to this. I will actually point out in my voters how on your flow sheet they didn't respond to the UCLA study, which actually gives us access to the turn does not, then we have access to the increased economic standards. So getting on to the apps. The one thing we do agree here with the government is this is about solvency. So let's look at solvency. They offer you a counter plan with no numbers at all, zero numbers. We don't know how many DREAM Act members there are, how many parents this would affect. We have no idea. It's some number. We offered you a starting point of 12 million. Now, we fully agree not all 12 million will come out of light, will accept amnesty. Some may not be able to, even if they come through. But we do have more solvency than they do. They talk about, well, they won't come out of the light. They won't do this. Yet we've all agreed that the program has worked in the past. Now, by worked in the past, we're referring to the number of people that have been granted legal status. They were granted legal status under Reagan. They were granted legal status under Clinton. So clearly the amnesty in and of itself does work. Clearly the past has shown people aren't afraid to come out of the light and come here. Which leads to my voter number 2, which is modeling. We offer a current reform program which does not exist, which changes the quo as it exists right now, which means we're topical, and we have successful modeling in the past under 2 different presidents. I would point out there also one was a Republican and one was a Democrat. We've seen it work under 2 different types of administration. People want to become citizens. We're just giving another pathway to people to become citizens. So my third voter here was the untouched upon UCLA study, which by making these illegals and giving them access to an amnesty program, it would actually increase $150 billion of economic stimulated activity. That's a lot of money that comes back into the system. We talked about Social Security and how there's $6 to $7 billion paid into Social Security that can't come back to these people, can't come back to them. But when they're citizens, it can come back to them. So again, let's look at the big picture overall. We are offering, although not everyone will take us up on our offer, a 1-year amnesty program for people to maintain citizenship. They are offering that once the DREAM Act is successful and people do apply for the DREAM Act, those parents that are left, that's their solvency. When it comes down to a solvency argument, and again, the criteria here is net benefits. Who's going to benefit the most? They benefit a very, very small portion of who they could help out. We give access to our program to everyone. For these reasons, you'll be voting today an affirmative ballot. Thank you.